Hello there, dear viewer, and welcome back. Did I keep you waiting after the end of part 1? Did you feel peacock blocked by any chance? Well, that's all behind us now, as I'm back to finish this puppy off.
Finally!
But first, a brief recap. Ursa, a middle-aged
lady
who looks like she's in her 70s, hunts the killer of her long-dead daddy, cuts her way through his men, and ends up going toe-to-toe with a giant yautja while her son ends up in the arms of the angel. Meanwhile, in feudal Japan, and hundreds of years later, we meet two brothers, Kenji and Kiyoshi, who are forced to duel for Daddy's hat. When Kiyoshi beats Hermano by drawing blood,
they drew first blood, not me.
Kenji takes off to learn the ways of the ninja.
The art of invisibility.
No idea how he did this or even survived on his own for all those years, but after Daddy dies, somehow Kenji returned, so he can do a bit of bloodletting too. But after accomplishing the weakest revenge plan in cinematic history, a predator shows up to break these two fortune cookies. And yes, fortune cookies are Japanese in origin despite what you find in your Chinese takeout.
Come on, man.
The bros team up to defeat the yautja, and after some parting words, Kiyoshi ends up in the arms of the angel. Yet despite centuries of separation between these two stories, both Ursa and Kenji find themselves awakened on an alien craft wearing Hassan Piker technology around their necks. But as we're about to find out, they're not alone. There is a third individual in the room with them, a young man wearing dog tags that read John Torres, and off we go into story number 3. I'm going to go ahead and give away that this title refers to the name slapped onto the main character's plane. I get the feeling Dan Trachtenberg really wanted all 3 of his stories to have names related to weapons and wasn't sure how else to shoehorn this idea into the third story. Bullets are definitely going to be used, but they really won't serve much of a purpose to the upcoming events. Would jet, pilot, or plane really have been such bad choices to add after the?
Get on with it!
Yes, get on with it!
We find ourselves in Florida, 1941, where we see a plane flying overhead and a car speeding on the road as it follows. Inside is John Torres, a young Latino-American who is pretty keen on the flying, so much so that he breaks down his own engine in pursuit of the overhead vehicle. Well, that's not very bright. His pops arrives and after some inspection tells John he flooded the engine. Now, it is worth noting that his dad is a mechanic, and him having a feel for what's wrong with a car does make some sense. That said, the impression this leaves on John and how it will be utilized later really doesn't. Also, how did he know his son broke down by the side of the road? I'm pretty sure he didn't have a T-Mobile plan, and there doesn't seem to be a payphone in sight. He asks Dad how to fix it, but instead receives a lecture about his piloting dreams.
Mijo, listen to me. Dreams are fuel. But you're not flying because you can't make the engine work. I'm done bailing you out, mijo. You have to bail yourself out from now on.
I'm a bad father.
What the f*** was that exchange? Oh, I see your car needs fixing. Also, here's a letter sending you to your certain demise. Putting aside that these two things happen to occur on the same day, wouldn't this have been an opportune time to give your boy some life advice? He's about to go into one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, and all you have to say is, "You're on your own, amigo. Padre del año." So we're off to the North Atlantic the following year, and we catch up with Torres as he repairs his fighter plane. Unfortunately, it won't start, and he is told by Commander Vandy he is grounded until he can fix it. He complains that he's a pilot, not a mechanic, but he's asked to consider what piloting means to him. I'm sorry, but why is Torres tasked with repairing his own plane to begin with? Do they not have a ground crew on this ship? There's supposed to be one per plane. And why doesn't he have a standard fighter like everyone else? Did the World War II U.S. military institute a BYOP mandate I wasn't aware of? Sirens sound and Torres runs to a downed pilot who's quite a mess and claiming something went right for their engines and killed everyone he was in the air with. Torres inspects the wreckage of the aircraft and finds an object lodged in the front which looks alien to him. It's a really good thing this ripped-to-shreds plane managed to land on the aircraft carrier instead of the vast ocean. Torres takes the object and messes around with it, trying to break it down with various methods. When he applies a torch, it reacts, sending out a hook to a plane, pulling out the engine, just missing the other mechanic seated in the pilot seat, then taking off to the sky. So the function of this object is to get close to a plane, shoot a hook into the engine, then I'm guessing return the parts to the Predator? Then how'd this one get lodged inside of an engine before shooting out its hook, other than the plot requiring it to happen? The other pilots go into the air and engage with the German fighters. Wait, the Predator only took out the Americans? Or is the idea that it sowed enough chaos to where neither side knows for sure? Cause the latter idea actually could make for an interesting scene where enemy forces have a shared fear and possibly even have to work together.
We don't do that here.
Or maybe the yautja have an affinity for Austrian artwork.
I'm Hitler!
Torres tries to tell the officer communicating with the jets that there's something else in the air with them, but when he's rebuffed, he runs to his plane. He does nothing more to repair it, by the way. He just gets inside and closes his eyes.
Like his father.
Then through the power of the Force, or La Fuerza, as John's people might call it, it starts to fly. One by one, the Predator begins downing the jets and taking their engines as trophies. Also, when did they start taking anything other than bones and skulls? Bro must be that weird mechanophiliac yautja that none of the others want to be around. When Torres's wing gets hit, he gets out of his plane in midair and repairs it. Now, this is incredibly stupid. Monumentally, in fact, but believe it or not, it is merely the first rock in an avalanche of retardation. A few minutes ago, he acted like he didn't know anything about fixing a plane. Now he's performing mid-air on-the-wing maintenance like a stuntman. And when the plane lever pulls and the jet does a hard left, Torres adjusts it by hand on the wing. Just, what are we doing here, movie? It's almost like they're making this stuff up on the fly. But this gets worse. The Predator fires a hook at his fighter, but it targets a flaming piece of debris as it detaches, which causes John to realize it must be the heat that the enemy ship is reading. I can't believe I have to explain this. His entire plane is hot. Why would a piece of debris affect the targeting system? You're telling me that the yautja don't understand that an enemy aircraft might catch fire and that they wouldn't account for that with their targeting technology? Well, that can't be the case since everything else the ship has fired at up to this point hasn't been on fire. So obviously the heat from those vehicles is more than sufficient.
It's an interesting point.
Torres then tells Vandy they should cool off their engines by, wait for it, flying higher.
You serious?
So movie. The freezing winters of 9th century Scandinavia weren't enough to cool the warm bodies of the Vikings, but a few seconds at high altitudes is going to cool an engine which can reach temperatures in the thousands of degrees?
That doesn't make any sense.
If the height of the plane can cool an engine that much and that fast, then wouldn't it freeze the pilots too? Also, take one look at Torres and tell me that man isn't going to do everything he can to avoid ice.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
And then Vandy, Commander Vandy, decides to sacrifice himself so Torres can take out the Predator.
What?
How the fuck does any of this make any sense? Vandy is more seasoned, more experienced. His plane is less damaged. He is easily the best person and in the best position to take down the Predator. Who f***ing wrote this? But of course, Vandy's sacrifice somehow enables Torres to get behind the Predator and shoot out one of its engines. No shields or countermeasures on the advanced alien fighter, by the way.
It's not stupid. It's advanced.
Torres leads the Predator to the German forces, and when one of their aircraft carrier guns target him, he jukes just in time, causing it to miss him and shoot down his pursuer instead.
How about Germany? They've never been the bad guys.
But after a beat, the alien ship re-emerges from the water, still in the game. John wonders what to do, and the picture of his father on his dashboard gives him an idea. Flood the engine. Well, what a convenient solution! His final day with Dad provided the means by which to take down the alien space fighter.
Oh, come on!
The Predator hooks the engine, and the line on which he does is just long enough to swing the now flaming plane right into his cockpit. It had to happen just so, and it's totally believable that Torres could plan all of that to happen that specific way. I think the brains it took to write this must have the viscosity of an old man's diarrhea. Torres bails out into the ocean, and I'm going to be the bigger person and not make any jokes about his back getting wet. He then fires a flare up into the air, which I'm guessing is the movie's way of telling us how he'd survive in the middle of the ocean, but isn't he much closer to the German fleet now? So wouldn't he just be getting their attention? Cut to some time after Torres somehow survived floating in enemy-controlled waters, and he's back home and working in an auto shop. But it appears the Predator found his address and they abduct him too. Damn those yellow pages. Also, the ship leaves behind a crop circle, so now we know where those come from. Clever boy. Torres wakes up on the ship, is marched down a hallway, gets dog-collared, then thrown into the waiting room where Ursa and Kenji are already seated. Kenji asks in Japanese if he's killed one of the Predators, which is strange because he only should know that he has killed one of them. After all, since he cannot speak Ursa's language and she doesn't seem the friendly sharing type.
I'm Torres. You just wake up too? Puck to it!
How would he presume that as a common link they share? Have you been watching the movie, Kenji? Torres continues to annoyingly talk to himself, trying to figure out a way for them to escape. But then the doors open and they're let out. Kneeling yautja line their path, which is respectful but kind of inconsistent with the rough way they've been treated since they've been brought on board. A door opens before the humans, and they're greeted by the sight of a massive skull and the sound of chanting yautja. Oh, so this actually wasn't the abducting ship. They're on the home planet. My mistake.
It was a shot in the dark, guys. But I don't think we're on Earth anymore.
Thank you, Captain Marvel Humor. A ship lands on the giant skull, and out of it walks the yautja leader whom Ursa calls the Grendel King. Wait, he flew on a spaceship to get to an arena on his own planet?
Just doesn't make sense.
Why do I get the feeling that the aircraft needs to be there for later? Grendel King begins to speak, and suddenly the collars around the prisoner's neck start to translate his words.
Yay! No, Gur, that's bad.
I thought this was an honorable alien race. Where is that if you're just going to fight the tired survivor of a triple threat match? A yautja prisoner is then escorted to the arena and fitted with a collar of his own. Or hers. I'm honestly not sure the biological sex of these things. They push a button and the collar explodes, Battle Royale style.
Holy shit. You guys, they put bombs on our necks!
Does John think the other humans are blind? The collar tells them that each will receive a weapon of their tribe, and they are told to become the killer of killers.
He said the thing!
To become the cock. Hang on, I thought the codex entry from the beginning of the movie said the Predators were the killer of killers. Okay, let's break this down. So the strongest human prey are designated as killers, while the Predators are killers of killers. In each of the three stories, we see Predators killing killers, thereby becoming killers of killers. But then Ursa, Kenji, and Torres killed them, so that would make them the killers of killers. Which means whoever wins this scuffle would become the killer of killers of killers of killers. And assuming the chieftain defeats that person, he would become the killer of the killer of killers of killers of killers. I think I need to re-abbreviate this movie. As for their loadouts, Ursa is given an axe, Kenji a sword, while Torres gets—
Wow, a gun!
some keys to jangle.
What were you upset about earlier?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Me neither, but this is amazing!
How is this a weapon of his tribe? Why are the yautja this stupid? Well, how else are we gonna shoehorn Dan's favorite prop from Predator 2 and Prey into the movie? Ursa attacks Torres and he manages to dodge her blows. Because of course someone who isn't trained to fight this way would dodge her better than Vikings from her own time period. He even gives her ample opportunity to land the killing blow when he points his gun and it doesn't fire. Kenji saves the lad, and now it appears the ninja and Ursa can speak to one another through the translators. Kenji refuses to fight her and says that he and his brother only managed to defeat the enemy by fighting together. That's nice, dude, but the other two pretty much did it solo, so I'm not sure that's gonna matter to them. At least it shouldn't, but obviously the movie needs him to be right to achieve their desired conclusion. Torres says the language is clearly a problem, but if they get up to that ship, then he can fly them out.
Huh?
Why would he assume he can fly something with completely different controls? Of course, the prospect of him flying them out all but guarantees his survival and is the entire reason the yautja clan leader arrived in a ship in the first place. Say it with me, folks. Plot convenience. Ursa says she'll slaughter the yautja leader after she butchers them, but Kenji reiterates that they must fight together. I'm going to have to side with her on this because, again, they're wearing explosive collars. I'm pretty sure if the yautja catch them plotting together, this would be the outcome. Yautja Supreme notices Kenji saving Torres, pushes a button on his power glove, and out walks a giant four-legged rancor, which appears to have its mouth above its eyes. The yautja game warden gives it a poke and it slings him up into the air and devours him. When I first watched this, I thought this poor soul's job seemed pointless and likely only conceived of in service to the visual of a gory monster kill, which is quite dumb but not especially consequential. And if it had been just that, I probably would have forgiven it. Of course, the fact that I'm bringing it up should tell you that this isn't the reason, because Peacock just can't help but reach its full idiotic potential. Ursa attacks again, but Torres shoots the axe out of her hand, which causes her to remember her son and that rescue pose from her chapter.
What a pile of shit.
He shot her axe, so now he's like Anders, and that means she won't kill him?
It makes no damn sense.
Torres insists that he has a plan to get them out, but oh, the giant monster throws him up into the air and swallows him whole. Maybe he isn't going to survive after all.
Don't what? Don't give me hope.
Nope, never mind. He's crawling around in its throat. And this is why the game warden was eaten, as Torres goes straight for the power glove.
I love the power glove. It's so bad.
He starts pushing buttons and eventually a blade comes out and he starts stabbing. With his efforts and those of Ursa and Kenji, they kill the giant beast, causing the king to give a Jabba laugh. The massive corpse is pushed out of the arena with Torres still trapped inside. Ursa and Kenji resume fighting with her wanting to be killed in combat. Grendel King says only one may live and Kenji says he will no longer play by these rules. Rather than wait to see if Ursa will fight, the king says they'll both die and then initiates the sequence to blow up their heads. You know, it probably would have been kinder of Kenji to actually kill Ursa as she wished if he lends any credibility to her pagan beliefs. I mean, she literally says she cannot see her son in Valhalla otherwise. But the collars don't go off as Torres rides out on a stolen speeder bike free from the dead monster. And just how did he escape?
No idea.
I mean, it's fair to assume he cut himself free, I guess, but none of the other predators got to him?
That makes sense to me.
And then he frees them all from their collars with the power glove and... Wait, are you telling me any gauntlet can release the prisoners? Why would you give this function to anyone other than the king and maybe a few other high-ranking yautja? Because plot, guys. Plot needs it to happen. Also, and this is just a thought, what was the so-called plan Torres alluded to before he was swallowed?
I have a plan to get us out of here.
I had a plan. I still have a plan.
Without the power glove, they are absolutely boned. Just something to think about. Anyway, they ride this speeder up the skull, and worth noting, that vehicle couldn't have been a factor in his plan because we didn't even know it existed until after the beast devoured him. Grendel King is waiting for them, and he halts the speeder and begins to beat each of them down with ease. He even grabs Ursa by the skull and should easily be able to crush her head. But nope, he tosses her to the side because of the power of plot armor.
Girl power!
Kenji attacks, and Ursa gets up and joins in, and by double teaming, they begin to overcome the king. The greatest of the predators, getting owned by just 2 people. I really miss the days when your only hope was to outsmart one of these things. Torres, meanwhile, runs inside of that conveniently placed spaceship and says,
Alright, Torres. Can't be that different from a wildcat.
It should be infinitely different. If Torres were to get inside of a modern jet with our 21st century technology, he would be utterly baffled. An alien fighter should be more foreign to him than a carbohydrate is to Ariana Grande.
Are you hungry? Something to eat? Not even a hot pocket? An Eggo?
Ursa and Kenji, meanwhile, cause a bit of damage, but when Grendel King's had enough, he bowls them over before grabbing both by the head.
Kill them all! Kill them all!
And they remain in this perfect head-crushing position for a full 20 seconds. The mountain in Game of Thrones took less time to do the same to Pedro Pascal. Not sure why, but that clip gets progressively more satisfying as time goes on, but I digress. And of course, after those precious wasted seconds where the world of Predator could have been made rid of these 2 insufferable characters, Torres learns to start up one of their spaceships because he closes his eyes and uses the power of the Force. The jets blow the king back, but Ursa and Kenji manage to hold on.
Guys, get in here!
Wait a minute!
Grendel King reemerges, throws his spear, and Kenji pushes Ursa out of the way, leading to the severing of his arm and giving us a nice cheap callback to Dylan from movie 1. They still manage to get aboard the ship, but as Torres flies away, the yautja hook it and begin to reel it back in. With the chain tightened, Ursa looks back at the boys and says, "Do not avenge me," then ziplines her way back down to the yautja, and before she lands, uses a shield she picked up to sabotage the chain. How did she even know how this thing worked? Never mind how stupid it is that such a blow could even be landed this way. So much for working together, Kenji. Ursa went 1v all the Predators mode and saved them all solo. Also, what was the point of her saying, "Do not avenge me"? It's obviously a callback to her father telling her to avenge him, then her telling her son to avenge her should she die. That was a lot of her for one sentence. Is the suggestion here that she learned some kind of a lesson? That Ursa's quest for vengeance was somehow why Anders died? That's just stupid. The quest for revenge was successful. How it all played out was ridiculous, but it worked. It just so happened that there was an alien hunter who followed them, which he was doing before they even arrived at Zoran's fortress. It would have probably killed her son somewhere else if not there. It seems clear that this line was intended to cap off a character arc, but that's nonsense. She hasn't had any arc whatsoever. If she needed to unlearn her father's last words, the events of this movie do nothing to make that happen whatsoever. Ursa tells the chieftain he failed and that her boys got away.
Yoku yatte kureta, ototo yo.
You don't have the collars to translate for you, so I don't think he understands you.
Or does he?
Also, why are you calling this guy your brother all of a sudden? You fought together for less than an hour. Whatever, they get away, though the Grendel King shouts,
Just kidding.
Well, they're screwed. Aside from John's limited knowledge of how to fly this ship, how would he even navigate his way home? I'm pretty sure his new toy doesn't come equipped with Google Maps. I don't see any way they survive this. Whew, well, thank God that's over. I didn't think I would be able to handle even another minute of that piece of... shit. Ursa is refrozen and placed inside of a pod, and we see there are practically thousands of prisoners. It's like Auschwitz in there. But then we see it, the big reveal, the moment to tie together the Predator Trachtenverse. Naru. Naru.
Who?
Naru, man. You know, the girl from Prey, legendary hero. Guys? Apparently, they captured her after that movie. Oh crap, does that mean Dutch and Lieutenant Harrigan are being brought back? Please don't. Okay, now it's over and... Wait, what do you mean they added another ending to this? Allow me to reiterate a point from the intro. I am not trying to tell you whether or not you should or should not enjoy this movie. It is perfectly fine if you do, and even understandable. There are action sequences which do look pretty cool, and the gore adds a visceral element which for some will add to the entertainment. And with other scenes such as the rooftop chase or the aerial dogfight, it's easy to see why those would be appealing to the average viewer. There's something almost inherently exciting about chases which result in long falls and parkour-like displays of athleticism, as well as air battles which result in crazy explosions. And bloody battles with blades and axes? Who on earth can't appreciate that? But this is still all superficial. These elements are building blocks which can add layers of depth to the characters, can enrich the story, and can be significantly more engaging beyond just the visuals. But the context in which they happen needs to make sense. But as I think I've effectively demonstrated, Peacock rarely, if ever, moves beyond the superficial. The Shield would have been a far better story if Ursa were not the leader of her clan. Say you keep her backstory intact, but rather than become a dual shield-wielding Mary Sue, she raises up her son to avenge her, turning him into a great warrior who ultimately destroys her father's killer. But then, as Anders fights the invading Yautja to keep his mother safe, he is killed, and after she lands a killing blow to a worn-down and/or distracted predator, she realizes that her obsession with revenge took away from her properly loving her son rather than raising him up as a tool for revenge. You can still make her a capable warrior in her own right, only in my version her last words to Kenji and Torres would be more meaningful. It would actually help complete an arc. Kenji's tale, meanwhile, is bad, but most of what weighs it down is how it fails to develop the relationship between he and his brother or his motivation for revisiting him. You cut me, so I'm cutting you is weak. And a little boy going out on his own and coming back a ninja, that needs a bit of explanation. Also, get rid of the cheap fake-outs where your characters fall several stories and survive. Then later, if you do a bit of legwork with Torres and Kenji, perhaps presenting parallels between the former and Kiyoshi, the brotherly bond these two strangers form can be more meaningful during the conclusion. Of course, that would also require a ton of work with the bullet. First, pick a better title. Then... You know, honestly, I'm not even sure how you fix this one without doing a full rewrite from the ground up. You can keep the pilot angle, but just about everything else needs to be done better. Closing your eyes like your father and feeling the plane doesn't work when you explicitly state and show that you haven't been leveling up your mechanic skills. Heck, you could model Torres' tale similar to Captain Stephen Hiller from Independence Day to far better results. He's a pilot who aspires to fly with NASA, takes on an alien craft, then uses his recognition from that encounter to aid him when he flies the ship in that film's final act. That arc is far from perfect, but it's leaps and bounds better than this shit. As for the final act, you probably should give us some insight into how the Yautja hunts down these humans. Do the Predator masks act as a black box to show the last person they were fighting, perhaps? Not only is this a possible solution, but it actually would be kind of cool to watch how they extract that information. As for the Battle Royale concept, why not just do what they did in Predators? It's stupid to make these humans fight each other at all. Antithetical to what we've seen from these monsters, in fact. You could literally have these three dropped into a jungle and have a matching trio of yautja hunt them down in order to impress their chieftain. And if one or more of the humans survive, one could argue that earns them the right to go home. It's not like we haven't seen the Predators show respect to humans before, or just make the whole thing futile and all three of them die but go down fighting. That'd be kind of ballsy. Instead, we were given this. A pathetic excuse for fan fiction which critics and the low-standard masses gobbled up hungrily. The Predator franchise has long been emitting foulness while floating in the toilet, and Killer of Killers is a shit-filled bidet in a gas station toilet. I honestly didn't think we'd ever get close to the stupidity of 2018's The Predator again, but Peacock somehow manages to come far too close for comfort. Regardless of whether one loves or hates the animation, and despite some decent violence, the overall substance is almost non-existent, as is any sense of internal logic central to this movie or the series it belongs to. And on another note, while I very much think the term woke is far too often misapplied to media these days, either for clicks or just from hypersensitivity, the reality is that Peacock is not free of this kind of messaging. There certainly are more overt examples which hit you over the head with their politics, but this film is still attempting to normalize such tropes. For one thing, it is now part of the Predator canon that Ursa, a well-past-her-prime female, is the most powerful hero or heroine any movie in this series has ever seen.
You gotta deal with it!
Not this guy or any of his team of Special Forces operators. This old-ass woman. That's ridiculous in and of itself. She checks numerous boxes we'd associate with a Mary Sue, and I have little doubt that Dan Trachtenberg, who has now gifted this franchise with 2 such ladies, will almost certainly bring Ursa back in the future if allowed. Kenji is the closest thing to a decent character in the movie, though that isn't to say he's a very good one. At the very least, he isn't overpowered or bogged down with cringy dialogue and has some level of masculine stoicism to him. So that makes him at least somewhat enjoyable. It's just too bad that his motivations don't make a lot of sense and that he's probably the least intelligent person in the movie. Torres, meanwhile, is the worst character in the film by far. If Ursa is a Mary Sue, Torres is a Gary Stu. Every solution this guy comes up with seems to work, and his slight frame is able to shoulder the heaviest plot armor imaginable. And while he isn't as physically imposing as Ursa Minor, he ultimately overcomes the supposed weakness he starts with despite never actually having to learn how. He's basically Raimundo Skywalker! And then there's the overall makeup of this trio to consider. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with none of your 3 protagonists being white males, but it's hard not to think the movie has something of a vendetta regarding this specific demographic. In fact, if you're a character in Peacock and were animated as a Caucasian XY, chances are you've been X'd out. Let's go to the videotape to show what I mean.
where are the white women at?
You don't write and or animate this kind of thing by accident, and I have a hard time believing the reasons for it are innocuous. By the way, the same is basically true in Prey. But worse than all of this is how irrevocably butchered the predators themselves have become as villainous foes. Thrown to the side is the crafty, dangerous hunter who stalks unseen. It's a long-standing problem with most of the Predator sequels, to be fair, but in Killer of Killers, some of the very worst damage has been done. Goliath-sized yautja cannot withstand an old woman, one of their pilots is outsmarted by a flaming engine he set on fire, none of them even bother with shoulder cannons anymore, and each seem intent on jumping into the fray despite being outnumbered. Even their own chieftain, an absolute behemoth, struggles with just 2 humans. In short, they employ the most idiotic tactics possible, nerfing the danger they once presented to near zero. It's embarrassing.
Thank you.
But perhaps none of this matters all that much or even at all to you. Perhaps you are able to mentally disengage from any potential ill intent from the filmmaker, the problems with the internal logic, or breaks from established lore. But that still adds to my overall point. The only way one can have a good time with this is by dimming down their brain to overlook the plethora of objective flaws, as well as mentally disengage, or even worse, agree with the messaging. The moment one does engage mentally, Peacock falls apart. Enjoy it if you wish, for your feelings are your own, but that won't make it good. And any claims that the Predator franchise is back on course and in good hands are a gross miscalculation. We are so not back. I appreciate all of you who stuck it out this long, for the gift of your time is much appreciated. And I certainly hope you enjoyed the video regardless of whether you agree with my conclusions. And if you feel the need to share your own in the comments below, feel free to do so. You can even judge my work like a Roman emperor via the thumbs. And if you appreciate my efforts, consider subscribing to the channel for more, be it for what's already been made or for what's to come. I thank you again for your time, and I'll see you next video. God bless, and Gourd speed.